Hello and welcome to Ready to Retire. I'm your host, Danette Lowe, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about 9 of the most common mistakes that we see when people are planning for their retirement and how to avoid them. When it comes to planning for retirement or any other major financial goal, it can seem overwhelming and daunting. And a lot of times we just don't look at it because we really don't understand all of the different moving parts. Really don't want to focus on the negative, like what people are doing wrong. But I thought it was important to talk about where things can go wrong kind of easily. And we talked about this before when we talked about the income tax mistakes. A lot of the reasons people made the mistake in the first place was that they just didn't know. Hopefully, information will bring you confidence and power to avoid these 9 most common mistakes. So, if you're ready, let's get started. Number one is not saving early enough. We think of retirement as being so far out there and so far away. And so we just don't start when we're younger. A big problem happens when we change jobs and we only have a few $1,000s set aside in a 401k. We have a tendency to withdraw that money. And instead of letting it roll over and keep adding to it and keep adding to it. So if you change jobs, keep your 401k savings going if you have one. The other thing you can do is bump up your percentage. So if you're not saving anything right now, start saving $50 a month, $100 a month. If you're at saving 6% of your pay, bump it up to 9, bump it up to 10. Really start to make a strong commitment to saving as early as possible. Number two is not saving enough overall. We go along and we're living our lives and we're doing things and we're helping our kids out and we're just spending money as we go. And when it comes time to retire, we don't have that much accumulated. So overall, we haven't saved enough. So just like the tip for number one was increasing your savings, that's the same here is think about where you're spending your money. So, how much should you be saving? Studies show anywhere from 12 to 20% of your net income should be going into savings. If you're not there yet, do what you can. Increase incrementally. Make it become a good financial habit. The third mistake we see people take is to take on too much risk in their portfolio. They don't have a diversified pool of investments. Sometimes we see people way overweighted in maybe their company stock or in a non liquid asset class. There's lots of ways that portfolios and investments can take on too much risk, and that's a real common mistake. So have someone take a look at your portfolio, have somebody understand what your risk profile is, and suggest rebalancing so that you are not taking on more risk for the rate of return that you're receiving. Number four is not planning enough money for healthcare costs in retirement. Especially if you're thinking about retiring early, healthcare can be a huge expense between the time you retire and the time you turn 65 and Medicare kicks in. And in general, this is something that people really underestimate. So keep that in mind as you're doing your planning, as you're looking to the future. Please keep healthcare costs in mind as you're going forward. Number five, ignoring tax planning. We talked about this earlier where people typically don't want to sell an investment that has a profit because they don't want to take capital gains. But what about when you're taking your withdrawals and your distributions? There are tax efficient ways to make that happen. And a lot of times people don't understand that and don't adhere to those principles. So incorporate tax planning into your withdrawal strategy. Number 6 is relying too much on Social Security. And this goes back to not saving enough. Social Security is going to be there, but Social Security is typically not enough to cover all of your expenses. Social Security is meant to supplement your income in retirement, not be the total amount. Number 7 is not anticipating inflation. Inflation is something that's on everyone's minds right now, but did you know that different types of expenses have different inflation rates? The cost of medical care inflates at a higher rate over time than the cost of groceries. And so when you're putting your financial plan together, what we do is put different inflation rates for different types of expenses. That's a big mistake that can be avoided with proper planning. Number 8 is withdrawing too much from your portfolio too soon. If you are taking out too much of your investment portfolio, then you might outlive the investment portfolio. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen people make is taking too much out of the portfolio. And it comes down to sometimes having optional expenses and thinking of them as mandatory expenses. How you spend your money in retirement matters. There is no one size fits all answer to this question. There is not one number that says, well, Danette, how much should I withdraw? What amount is too much? Well, it depends on everyone's situation. But for example, if your financial advisor says that your portfolio can support withdrawing $5,000 a month and you're withdrawing $10,000 a month, then you're going to get into trouble. So be careful about withdrawals, especially in the beginning as you start your retirement journey. Number 9 is underestimating the overall expenses in retirement. Especially in the early years of retirement, their expenses actually go up. They actually spend more in the first few years of retirement than they did while they're working. So when you first retire, there is typically an increase in spending. And a lot of people think, oh, I'm not going to be working, I will be spending less. And it's not always the case. That's a really quick overview of 9 common mistakes that people make. Hopefully you got some tips to help you out with that. I'm going to leave you with number 10, which is the bonus mistake. And this is just a little bit of maybe a rant on my part. One of the things that I think people make mistakes is having too many financial advisors. I had a gentleman come in and ask me if I would work with him, and he said he had 3 other financial advisors. I would be number 4. And I said, my advice to you is to pick one financial advisor and consolidate everything with. And he says, yeah, that's what you all say. So here is my reasoning for that. If you have multiple accounts at multiple different locations, then you don't have one comprehensive overview. You're possibly taking too much risk, like we talked about earlier, and you're not getting advantage of breakpoints. Most advisors are going to fee only or fee based platforms, and you get usually a discount the more money you have invested. You're going to have overlap in your plans. It's not going to be cohesive. And the worst is if something happens to you, then the surviving spouse has an absolute nightmare to deal with. When you have multiple accounts and multiple financial advisors, it can be an absolute overwhelming time for the surviving spouse. So, that is my bonus tip. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope we gave some good help to avoid these common mistakes. Thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next episode.